The text arrived at 11:47 p.m. The house was quiet when my phone lit up. I'd been at my kitchen table for over an hour, not working, not reading, just sitting with a cup of chamomile tea that had gone cold, watching February rain streak down the window glass in thin silver lines. It had been that kind of week. The slow-pressure kind, where you feel something building underneath everything you do, and you can't tell yet whether it's going to break into something terrible or quietly dissolve the way storms sometimes do, without ceremony, without warning. I wasn't thinking about my father. I was thinking about a deposition I had scheduled for Thursday morning, a complex embezzlement case involving a mid-sized logistics company and a CFO who had been remarkably creative with intercompany loan structures. I was thinking about whether my associate Priya had finished the forensic summary I needed. I was thinking about whether I had remembered to eat dinner, which I hadn't. Then the notification came. I picked up the phone without urgency. My father texted rarely, and when he did it was usually forwarded news articles or photos of his garden, never anything requiring a response before morning.
Dad, I disown you. You are no longer my child. Talk to my lawyer.
I read it once. Then again. Then I set the phone face down on the table and sat with it for a long moment, listening to the rain. 34 years. That's how long I had been his daughter. Through childhood summers helping at his landscaping yard, through high school when I kept the business books because he didn't trust anyone else with them, through college and graduate school, through 11 years of building my own career. 34 years, and he had ended it in 17 words, at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, without a phone call, without a conversation, without even the basic human courtesy of calling to say the words out loud. I picked up the phone. I opened the message thread. I typed one word.
Okay.
Then I opened my laptop, pulled on my banking dashboard, and began. My name is Nadia Osei. I am a forensic financial analyst and the co-founder of Webb and Osei Financial Investigations, a firm I built with my colleague and closest friend Marcus Webb over the past 7 years. We employ 23 people. We hold active contracts with 4 federal agencies and 2 major regional banks. Our work is precise, document-heavy, and largely invisible. We find what people try to conceal in financial records, and we present it in language that holds up in court. I have testified in federal court 14 times. I have never once been successfully challenged on the integrity of my documentation. I tell you this not to impress you, but because it is necessary context for everything that follows. The story I am about to tell you is not a story about a daughter who discovered her power late and used it in a moment of anger. It is a story about a woman who spent 2 years building an airtight case before she took a single action, because that is the only way she knows how to do anything. What my family did not know for 6 years is that I had been quietly documenting all of it. I need to go back to where it started because it didn't start with a text message. It didn't start with fraud or anger or any single moment of betrayal. It started with a savings account and a phone call and my mother's voice saying the 4 words that would define the next 6 years of my life. Family takes care of family. I was 26 years old. I had just completed my master's degree in forensic accounting at Georgia State and landed my first real position at a financial consulting firm downtown, a junior analyst role, $58,000 a year, which felt like an extraordinary amount of money after years of ramen budgets and shared apartments. I had $9,200 in savings. I had no debt beyond a modest student loan. I was already paying ahead of schedule. I had a clear, specific plan for the next 5 years that I had written out longhand and taped inside my closet door. My parents called 2 weeks after I started the job. My father's landscaping business, Osei Grounds, which he had run for 20 years out of a yard in Decatur, building it from a 1-truck operation to a 12-person crew with municipal contracts, had hit a serious rough patch. A large commercial contract had fallen through without warning when the client went bankrupt. Equipment needed replacing. A balloon payment on a small business loan was coming due within 30 days, and he hadn't been able to refinance it in time. Could I help? Just temporarily. It was $8,000. He would pay it back. Family takes care of family. I wired the $8,000 within 48 hours. Every dollar in my savings account. I told myself it was a loan. I said the word loan explicitly, out loud on the phone, and my mother laughed softly and said, of course, you know we're good for it. That was the first wire transfer. Over the following 6 years, there would be 247 more. I want to be fair to who my parents were, or at least who I believed them to be for the majority of my life, because I think fairness matters especially when the story is about harm. My father, Kwame Osei, came to this country from Kumasi at 22 years old with $400 and an envelope sewn into the lining of his coat and a single suitcase. He spoke 4 languages. He had a secondary school education and an extraordinary talent for making things grow. He built Osei grounds with his hands and his stubbornness and 20 years of 6-day weeks, and I watched him do it from the time I was old enough to understand what I was watching. That work ethic shaped me completely. The discipline I bring to my own firm, the long hours, the refusal to cut corners, the belief that the work either holds up entirely or it doesn't hold up at all, I learned that from him.
I have never stopped knowing that.
My mother, Abina, was the kind of woman who kept a mental catalog of every birthday in our extended family across 2 continents and never missed one. She made soup for sick neighbors without being asked. She kept a home that smelled permanently like something good was happening in the kitchen. She was the first person I called when anything significant occurred, a promotion, a difficult case, a bad day, a good day for most of my adult life. Her laugh was enormous and immediate and completely genuine. I have not heard it since the conference room, and that absence has a specific weight to it I carry every day. I tell you this so that you understand. I did not come from cartoons. I came from real people who were capable of real love and who were also, gradually and then completely, capable of doing something that I still find difficult to describe in clean language. Not malice, exactly. Not calculated cruelty. Something closer to entitlement that had curdled over time into something they couldn't see in themselves anymore. The assumption that my resources were family resources, that my silence was consent, that my continued support was proof that everything was fine. Everything was not fine. The requests kept coming, and they kept being framed as temporary. In my 2nd year, my parents asked me to cover the mortgage for 3 months while my father chased 2 new municipal contracts. 3 months became 6. 6 months became the standing transfer, $2,800 every first of the month. Automated, so quiet I barely registered it as a choice anymore. In my 3rd year, my younger sister Alma, who is 24 and living at home, needed a car. My parents bought her a Honda Civic. The financing was $1,100 a month. For months in, the payments were quietly rolled into the transfers they were receiving from me. Nobody mentioned this. I found out 3 years later. In my 4th year, my brother Kofi decided to pursue a master's degree in education. Tuition, $38,000. My parents asked me to cover it as a gift, an investment in the family, my mother said, and I did because he was 25 and I remembered being 25 and needing someone to believe in me. I wired the money in 2 installments. That same year, my father's business hit another rough patch, a real one this time, a combination of a lost contract and an equipment failure that couldn't wait. He needed $60,000 to cover payroll and replace a truck. I transferred it within a week. He called me his rock. I felt proud in a way I am now ashamed of because I understand now that his rock meant his source, and the 2 things are not the same. The utilities transfer, $620 a month, began in my 5th year, so gradually that I have no memory of agreeing to it. It simply appeared in my outgoing transfers 1 month, and I don't recall a conversation. I may have said yes without registering what I was agreeing to. I may not have been asked at all. By my 6th year, I was sending $4,820 every single month to my family. In a year, that was $57,840. Over 6 years, accounting for the lump sums, the tuition, the business bailouts, 2 additional emergency infusions of $20,000 each, my total documented support was $463,200. And that is only what I sent voluntarily. The discovery was not dramatic. That's the part that still catches somewhere in my chest when I think about it. How ordinary the moment was. It was a Tuesday afternoon in April of my 31st year, and I was sitting at my desk doing something I do every spring without drama. reviewing my annual credit report. It is the kind of routine maintenance that every financial professional performs without ceremony, the way a mechanic checks their own car's oil. I was scrolling through the report when I saw an account I didn't recognize. A Visa card, $12,400 balance. Opened 3 years earlier. Address listed. My mother's house indicator, which I had never used as my residential address since I was 19 years old. I felt something cold move through me, very still and very cold. I pulled the full report. There were 2 more accounts. A retail store card, $8,800. A personal line of credit, $13,200. All 3 open with my social security number. All 3 listing my mother's address. All 3 with balances that had been accruing interest for years. I sat at my desk and did not move for a very long time. Then I called Marcus. He came over that night. He brought his laptop and a bottle of scotch that we did not open. We worked at my kitchen table from 7 in the evening until past midnight. By the time we stopped, we had pulled 7 years of my complete financial records, cross-referenced every wire transfer, mapped every account open to my name, and created the skeleton of a document that would eventually run to 214 pages. Marcus looked at me at approximately 11:30 p.m. with the expression he wears when he has found something that changes the shape of everything. "Nadia," he said, "this is federal." "I know," I said. "What do you want to do?" I looked at the screen. At the transfers. At the accounts. At my name on documents I had never signed. "I want to know everything first," I said. "All of it. Every dollar, every account, every signature. The complete picture. Before I do a single thing." He nodded once. He understood. He has known me for 11 years, and he understood exactly what that meant. We closed our laptops. He went home. I sat at the table alone for another hour and let it settle over me. Not the anger, which would come later in waves, but the first feeling, which was something stranger and more disorienting. It was the feeling of a world reorganizing itself around a new truth. The feeling of understanding for the first time that the story you had been living in was not the story that was actually happening. The documentation took 2 years. 2 years of careful, methodical, professional-grade forensic work applied to my own life. Marcus helped. My attorney, a woman named Diane Forsyth who specializes in financial fraud and family law, came in at month 4 and helped structure the legal architecture. My accountant pulled 7 years of tax records. A handwriting expert Marcus had used on 3 prior federal cases, reviewed the signatures on the fraudulent account applications. Here is what the 214 pages documented. Wire transfers from my accounts to my family, fully sourced and time-stamped, $463,200 across 6 years. Mortgage payments, $2,800 per month for 68 months. Utilities, $620 per month for 51 months. Alma's car payments, $1,100 per month for 41 months, routed through my parents' account without my knowledge of the destination. Kofi's tuition, $38,000. Business infusions, $100,000 across 3 separate transfers. Emergency payments, $40,000 across 2 transfers in year 5. Fraudulent accounts opened in my name without my knowledge or consent, 11 total. Combined balance across all 11 at the time of discovery, $218,400. The accounts had been opened over a 4-year period. The addresses used were variations of my parents' address, and 2 addresses I had never lived at. The identification information was mine. The signatures were not. The handwriting expert's analysis, attached as Exhibit F, of 11 signature samples reviewed, 0 were consistent with my known handwriting. 4 were close imitations. 7 appeared to have been signed by the same individual, whose writing characteristics were consistent across applications. There was also the matter of a property document. My father had refinanced the family home in year 5. On the cosigner line of the refinancing document, my name appeared. I have never signed a mortgage document in my life. My income had been used to qualify for the refinance. I had not been told. The signature was not mine. My credit score at the time I began the investigation, 604. At the time I graduated with my master's degree, 791. The 187-point difference represented 6 years of fraudulent accounts accruing balances and late payments in my name, all while I was sending nearly $5,000 per month to the people responsible. I had not known. I had simply carried it, quietly, as an unexplained weight. I want to tell you about the Wednesday afternoon in October, 6 months before the text, when I almost stopped everything. I had driven to my parents' house to drop off groceries. I did this monthly. I had done it for years, so automatically it barely registered as a decision. I parked in the driveway I'd grown up parking in. I carried 2 bags of food to the door. My mother opened it before I could knock. She hugged me immediately. She smelled like the perfume she had worn my entire life, something warm and slightly floral that I cannot name but would recognize anywhere on earth. She held me for a moment longer than usual, and then stepped back and held my face in both hands and looked at me the way she had looked at me since I was small. "You look tired," she said. "You work too hard." "I'm okay," I said. "Come eat something," she said. I made groundnut soup. I sat at the kitchen table while she ladled soup into a bowl. My father was watching television in the next room. Alma was on the couch with her laptop, doing what she described as job searching, which had been her primary activity for 15 months. The house smelled like soup and laundry and the specific warmth of a home that has been lived in for a long time. And I sat there with 214 pages of documentation on my laptop at home, and 11 fraudulent accounts, and a forged mortgage signature, and nearly $500,000 in transfers, and my mother put a bowl of groundnut soup in front of me and sat down across from me and asked about my work and listened with real interest, the way she always had. I wanted to close the folder. Permanently. Pay off the fraudulent debt myself and absorb it and continue, because she smelled like that perfume and she touched my face and she made soup and she was my mother. I ate the soup. I drove home. I sat in my car in my parking garage for 20 minutes before I went inside. Then I called Marcus. He listened to all of it without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Nadia," he said finally, "you can love someone completely and still refuse to be destroyed by them. Those are not opposites. They never were." I didn't respond right away. "I know," I said eventually. "Do you?" he said. Not unkindly, just honestly. I sat with that for 3 days. I went back to work. I reviewed 2 other cases. I ran 5 miles on Saturday morning, which I do when I need to think without thinking. I called my friend Simone on Sunday and talked about nothing in particular for an hour. I cooked a real dinner for myself for the first time in 2 weeks. On Monday morning, I reopened the folder and kept working. The text came 4 months later, on a Tuesday night in February, and the context matters precisely. My father had called 2 weeks prior. He needed another business infusion, $75,000. A large municipal contract OSE grounds had held for 4 years had gone to a competitor in a rebid. He needed to cover payroll for 60 days while he rebuilt the client base. His voice on the phone was tight in a specific way, the way it got when he needed something and was trying to sound like he wasn't asking. I said, "Dad, I can't do that right now. I'm sorry." The silence that followed was so complete I checked my phone to see if the call had dropped.
"Can't," he said at last.
"Or won't."
"Can't," I said.
It was not entirely true. The truth was more complicated than can't, and I wasn't ready to have the conversation the whole truth would require. He hung up. No goodbye. Just the call ending. My mother called over the following 2 weeks 4 separate times. Each call was a variation of the same movement. "Your father is under tremendous stress. You know how he carries things. It would mean so much. Family is everything." I listened completely each time. I said I understood about the contract. I said I was sorry. I did not change my answer. Then the text came. "I disown you. You are no longer my child. Talk to my lawyer." I read it. I set the phone down. I sat in the quiet for a moment. Then I picked it up and typed. Okay. I opened my laptop. I pulled on my banking dashboard and began moving through the transfers one by one. $2,800 mortgage. Canceled. $620 utilities. Canceled. $1,100 Alma's car payment, routed through parent account. Canceled. $400. Supplemental grocery transfer my mother had requested 18 months ago and which had continued without discussion. Cancelled. A standing transfer to my brother Kofi's former apartment address. He'd moved 2 years ago, but the transfer destination had been quietly updated to my parents' account at some point without my knowledge. Cancelled. I went through every outgoing transfer, every one connected to my family of origin. I canceled them all methodically, in the same order I would move through a financial document in a professional context, top to bottom, nothing skipped, nothing rushed. The total monthly outflow I had been sustaining, $4,820. It took 43 minutes. Then I opened a draft email to my attorney Diane Forsyth and typed 4 words, proceed as we discussed. I closed the laptop. I rinsed my tea mug. I turned off the kitchen light. I went to bed. For the first time in longer than I could clearly reconstruct, I slept through the night from beginning to end without waking once. 36 hours later, my phone rang at 7:04 a.m. My mother. I lay in bed and watched it ring. Then again. Then a third time, 6 minutes later. On the 4th call, I picked up. The mortgage company called. Her voice was doing something I had never heard it do, stripped of its usual warmth and strategy, just raw and frightened, like a sound a person makes when the floor drops. They said the automatic payment failed. Nadia, did something happen with your account? Is everything okay? I sat up. Nothing happened with my account. Silence. I don't understand, she said. Mom, I said. Dad sent me a text 2 nights ago telling me I'm no longer his child. I took him at his word. A longer silence. He didn't mean, she started. A courier is coming to the house today, I said. A package addressed to both of you. Please read it carefully and completely. There are instructions from my attorney at the end. Nadia. I love you, I said. I meant it. That is the part that doesn't simplify, even now. Please read the document. I'll be available to talk after you have. I ended the call. I got up. I made coffee. I went to work. The package arrived at my parents' house at 10:22 a.m. by private courier. Signed for by my mother. Copies went simultaneously to Alma's email address, to Kofi's email address, to the attorney my father had referenced in his text, a general practice lawyer named Gerald Pitts who primarily handled traffic matters and real estate closings and who, according to Diane's subsequent conversation with his office, had no advance knowledge that he was being named as a resource in a disownment text. To the fraud investigation department of the bank holding the fraudulent accounts. To the 3 major credit bureaus. The federal identity theft report had been filed the previous morning, before I canceled the transfers, before I sent the email to Diane. That sequence was deliberate. The legal process had to be initiated before the financial withdrawal, so that nothing I did could be characterized as retaliatory rather than protective. Marcus had reviewed the complete 214-page document one final time at 6 a.m. on the morning of the courier. We sat across from each other at my kitchen table, same chairs, same place we'd built the original skeleton of this case 2 years earlier, and he went through it section by section with the focused quiet he brings to every final review. It's clean, he said when he finished. Every transfer has corresponding bank records. Every fraudulent account has the original application image. Every signature has the expert analysis and credential documentation. The timeline is unambiguous. Good, I said. He looked at me over his coffee cup. How are you? I'm okay, I said. You don't have to be, he said. I thought about it honestly. I'm somewhere between okay and not okay, I said. I think that's probably right. He nodded. That was sufficient. That is one of the things I value most about Marcus. He doesn't require resolution before it's available. The confrontation did not happen the way you might imagine. There was no dinner table. No extended family assembled as witnesses. No moment where I stood in a room full of people and delivered a speech while someone's fork clattered to the floor. I am a forensic analyst. I build cases in conference rooms. That is where I am most effective, and that is where it happened. My parents came to my office 11 days after the courier. They arrived without an appointment on a Thursday morning. My assistant called back to inform me. I asked her to offer them water and show them to conference room B and to tell them I'd be in shortly. I sat at my desk for 5 minutes. I breathed. I reviewed the summary page of the document one more time, not because I needed to, but because holding the document steadied me. Then I picked it up and walked down the hall. Marcus was already seated at the corner of the table, laptop open, as we had agreed. He was there as a professional witness. He would not speak unless addressed directly. My father was in a suit. I hadn't seen him in a suit in years. He looked older than I had ever seen him look, not just aged, but diminished in some way that had nothing to do with appearance, something internal and structural, like a building that is still standing but has lost the thing that was holding it up. My mother was composed in the way she is when composure is a strategy. Alma was with them, which I had not anticipated. She sat slightly apart, slightly angled away from my parents, and would not look at any of us directly. I sat down. I placed the document on the table. I did not hug anyone. "I assume you've all read it," I said.
Nadia.
My father's voice was different than I had expected, older than anger. Something that had been anger and had passed through it into something quieter and harder. "Some of those accounts, there are things your mother—" "The handwriting analysis is on page 89, I said. "The expert's qualifications and methodology are on pages 90 and 91. "I'm not asking for an explanation of the accounts. I'm informing you that they exist, that they've been formally reported, and that the bank's investigation is proceeding independently of anything I do or don't do. "The federal report," my mother began, "was filed before I contacted you," I said. "That's not something I have the ability to reverse. The process is the bank's now, and the federal investigators. My cooperation with their process is already documented." Alma looked up for the first time. Her eyes were swollen. "I didn't know," she said. Her voice cracked on the second word. "The car, I thought Mom and Dad were paying for it."
"I didn't know any of this."
"I know you didn't," I said. I believed her completely. The documentation had been clear. Alma and Kofi had been kept as uninformed as I had, just from the other side. They were beneficiaries of a system they hadn't designed and hadn't been shown the full shape of. We had all been managed within the same architecture, just from different positions inside it. My father put his hands flat on the table. The hands that had built a business from $400 and a suitcase. I looked at them, and I felt something complicated move through me that I don't have a clean word for. Not forgiveness, not anger, not grief exactly, but something that contained all three without being any of them fully. "What do you want from us?" he asked. It was the right question. I had been preparing the answer for months. "The fraudulent debt," I said. "Repaid in full, on a structured schedule my attorney and yours will document. My name removed from the mortgage within 60 days. Diane has already sent Gerald the paperwork. Alma's car loan transferred to her name. She keeps the car if she takes over the payments, which I've already spoken to her separately about doing." I paused. "And I want this pattern to end." "What pattern?" my mother said quietly. "The one where someone carries everything without acknowledgement, and when they stop carrying it they're called selfish." I said it without heat. That pattern. I want it to end. No one spoke. "I'm not ending this family," I said. "I'm ending the arrangement. I need you to understand that those are different things." My father looked at me for a long time. There was something in his face I had never seen there before. Not shame, exactly, though that was part of it. Something closer to the look of a man who has been truly seen for the first time and found the experience more painful than he'd imagined it would be. "I'm sorry," he said. 2 words. Not sufficient for everything. Nothing would be sufficient for everything. But they were real, I believed that, and I held them as such. "I know," I said. I stood. Marcus closed his laptop and stood with me. I looked at my mother, who was holding herself very still. I looked at Alma, who was crying quietly. I looked at my father. "Gerald will hear from Diane by end of day," I said. "Please have him respond promptly." Then I walked out. The legal process ran 4 months. The bank's investigation confirmed 11 fraudulent accounts, total fraudulent balance $218,400. A repayment plan was structured between my parents, the bank, and my attorney, payments over 36 months, documented, enforceable, with my name formally removed from all associated accounts. My name came off the mortgage on day 44 of the 60-day window. The federal identity theft investigation proceeded. My parents were required to cooperate fully, which they did. Ultimately, no criminal charges were filed. Diane had built a cooperation clause into the resolution framework at my explicit instruction, because I had not done any of this to put my parents in prison. I had done it to make them stop, and to make it impossible to pretend it hadn't happened. My credit score, as of last spring, 784. Climbing. Kofi called me 6 weeks after the conference room. He had read the document in full. He was quiet on the phone for a long time before he said anything, and when he spoke his voice had the quality of someone who has recently looked at something difficult and hasn't finished processing it. "I feel sick," he said.
"You didn't know," I said.
"I should have asked more questions," he said. "Maybe," I said. "But you didn't build it. You don't have to carry it." We talked for 2 hours. It was the most honest conversation we had ever had, not just about this, but about our family, about the years growing up, about the things we had each been told and believed, and are now examining from the other side of knowing. It was uncomfortable and necessary, and I was grateful for it. Alma took over the car payments the month after the conference room. She got a job at a marketing agency in Midtown, her first full-time position in nearly 2 years. She texted me a photo of her first paycheck on a Friday afternoon with no caption. I sent back a small flame emoji. She sent back 3 laughing faces. It was the beginning of something tentative and real that I hope, slowly, becomes more. My father has not called me since the conference room. It has been 8 months. I do not know what his silence means, whether it is shame, or anger, or both, or something I don't have a name for. I think about calling him sometimes. I haven't yet. I am not sure what I would say, or what I want from the conversation, or whether wanting something from it is even the right frame. I am sitting with that question without forcing an answer, which is harder than it sounds. My mother and I speak every 2 weeks. It is not what it was. The ease is gone, that specific ease of talking to someone who you believe knows you completely and wants only good things for you. I understand now that the ease was at least partly built on things that were not true, and I don't know yet how much of it I can rebuild on better foundations. We are trying. She is trying. I am trying. It is slow and careful, and sometimes painful, and it is what we have. She called me last month when I got the news that Webb and Osei had been awarded our largest federal contract to date, $7.2 million over 3 years with an agency I'm not able to name publicly. I called her because I wanted to, and because wanting to is still complicated, and because I've decided that complicated is something I can live inside without resolving it prematurely. She said she was proud of me. I said thank you. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "I know I don't have the right to say that anymore. I know what we did. I know what I did. But I am. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. I need you to know that's true even though the rest of it is also true." I didn't respond immediately. "I hear you," I said eventually. That was all I could offer. It was honest. I think honest is what we owe each other now, more than warmth, more than performance. Just honest. Marcus and I had dinner the week the legal process formally closed. The Thai place near the office, the one we've been going to since we were 27-year-old associates at our first firm, before any of this existed. We ordered the same things we always order. We talked about the new contract, about a difficult hire we'd been considering, about a case that was frustrating both of us in the specific way that cases are frustrating when the evidence is clear, but the process is slow. Near the end of dinner, when the plates had been cleared and we were just sitting, Marcus looked at me the way he does when he's about to ask something real. "How does it feel," he said, "now that it's actually done?" I held a question for a moment. "Quieter," I said. "It feels quieter than I expected." Good quiet or hard quiet? I thought about it. Both. Mostly good. Sometimes hard. Sometimes both at the same time. He raised his glass. To both at the same time. I raised mine. To both at the same time. We drove home separately. I made tea when I got in, chamomile, same as always. I sat at the kitchen table, at the same chair where the text had arrived 4 months ago, and I looked at the rain on the window, which was doing the same thing it had been doing that night, thin silver lines moving down the glass. I did not feel triumphant.
I want to be honest about that.
I had half expected to feel triumphant, and I don't, and I think the absence of triumph is actually the most truthful thing about this whole story. I felt like a person who had done something hard and true, and was now on the other side of it, where hard, true things deposit you, not in a bright open field, but in an ordinary room, with ordinary light, with the rest of your life still in front of you requiring ordinary attention.
I had lost something.
I know that. The family I believed I had, not the one I actually had, but the one I had been carrying in my imagination alongside the real one, that family is gone. It was never entirely real, but it was real enough that losing it cost something. I am still paying that cost. I expect I will be for a while. But I had also put something down. Something I had been carrying without fully understanding the weight of, and now it was on the ground, and my hands were empty, and I could feel that emptiness in a way that was strange and uncomfortable, and also, underneath all of that, a relief so deep it was almost indistinguishable from grief. The tea went cold. I sat there a while longer, not thinking about anything in particular, just letting the house be quiet around me, just breathing. Outside, the rain kept moving down the glass, thin and silver and steady, the way it does when it's settled in for the night and isn't in any hurry to stop. I left the cup on the table and went to bed.